Hello, Nathan here, and happy December, happy holidays, and welcome to the second ever DOS video that I've made on this channel. The first one I did last year was just a simple fragment video about this machine, the 5160 XT, that I found at a garage sale that year. And it was just a simple, overview of the XT to IDE to SD card adapter that TechSelect sells, and just kind of going over the experience of using it. I'd never messed with machines like this, at least in modern times. I never owned anything like this. This kind of just fell in my lap because it was a really good deal. And I kind of wanted to showcase some of my experiences with that. And since doing that video, I've done a little further restoration and stuff. Not much on this machine. I did get both drives working. I did get the Seagate drive working as well. It just needed a low-level format. I also added a real-time clock card, so, just out of convenience. But this video isn't really about this machine. It's about this machine, the Compaq Portable III. And this is another one that I got in that garage sale. There was 4 machines total, although it wasn't actually this one. It was that one. Yeah, this was the original one that I got in the garage sale, and I cleaned up, and I did try to power it on last year, and I heard a pop. Magic smoke test. And inside on the motherboard, a tantalum exploded and it was making weird noises, and I just, packed it up or stuck it on that shelf there and didn't touch it for a year. I figured, it's going to probably need a pretty in-depth repair, restoration, and I was focused on the XT at the time and some other things, so I just kind of put it aside. But then somebody on the Pixel Talk Discord server alerted me to a listing on Mercari for another Compaq Portable 3 for only $40. And it was actually shown powering on. The screen would light up, and it just showed a memory error. So it was listed as not working. And I thought, well, between the two machines, I should be able to get at least one of them working. So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about not only the Compaq Portable 3 in general and a little history about it, and some of my fixes, but also some of my upgrades and enhancements that I've done to this machine over the past several months now. So without any further ado, this is PixelPipes. So the Compaq Portable 3 has kind of an interesting history, and I want to kind of touch on that a little bit. I don't want to go too in-depth because the history of Compaq and the portables in general has been done many, many times. I don't have anything new to contribute with that. As much as I love doing, history, talk about history and telling the story of these machines, there's so many other very well done videos about that, and even a TV series inspired by the events of Compaq making their first computer called Halt and Catch Fire, which I haven't seen, but pretty much everyone says I should. But just kind of briefly, in general, the Compaq Portable, the first one, was Compaq's first product. And, it was hailed at the time as being one of the most highly compatible clones of the IBM PC at the time. And beyond just being a highly compatible IBM clone, it was also portable somewhat. The thing weighed like 34 pounds, fully loaded, configured. So you needed definitely a lot of upper body strength to carry it from place to place, but it was more convenient in the sense that it was a full machine in this giant beige behemoth of a case with a CRT built in, a detachable keyboard, and all your drives together in one. but there was no battery. You had to plug it in and leave it plugged in, so it was really just transportable. It wasn't really, definitely wasn't something you would operate while sitting on your lap, that's for sure. And so, of course, many people dubbed those machines, and others like them, as luggables. Compaq did not make the first luggable. They didn't even make the first IBM clone, but they were the first to really do it successfully and do it in a way that was legal. Anyway, with the success of the original Compaq Portable, they released, of course, the second generation Compaq Portable II, which was largely the same. I mean, they both had a green monochrome CRT screen, a 9-inch screen, and you could get different configurations, either dual floppy or floppy and a hard disk. The second generation, though, did upgrade the CPU from an 8088 to an 8286, running at 8 megahertz. You can have up to 640K of memory built in, and it did kind of slim it down a little bit compared to the original portable. But the key thing with both of those machines is the built-in expandability. They actually had ISA slots built in, both 8-bit and 16-bit in the case of the Portable 2, which allowed you to add whatever you wanted. Further memory expansion, hard cards, networking. There was even an option that Compaq offered with an enhanced color graphics card, which gave you EGA support. And there was a connector, a little header on the card that allowed you to connect the internal monitor to it. And so you'd have upgraded graphics. Otherwise, built in, the machines had a kind of dual mode MDA/CGA compatible graphics solution, which was fine for most people, and you could connect it to an external screen and get color graphics that way. But then for the third Compaq Portable, Compaq wanted to change things up drastically. As you can see, this is quite a bit different from the form factor of the first two machines, in the sense that, first of all, it's a lot smaller, it's a lot lighter, and it trades out the screen technology with a gas plasma display. This is an orange amber monochrome display technology that in the 80s was among the best screen technology available. There was, of course, LCD technology back then, but most of it wasn't in color. Most of the time, you didn't even get a backlight. Gas plasma displays were lit. They were very sharp. They didn't have any of the kind of the ghosting issues or the viewing angle problems that you had back in the day. And you could, of course, raise it up and angle it to something more ergonomic. So for the 80s, this was a very sophisticated flat panel technology. Among other enhancements, Compaq intended to have this be a new generation of machine with the latest Intel 386 processor. But allegedly, from what I read, the 386 boards weren't ready in time for launch. So they launched the machine with a 286, like the Portable 2, just a bit upgraded. So you did have potential built-in support for memory expansion. It was an optional thing, but it came on a kind of proprietary memory expansion board that went into the machine and could give you, from the factory, up to 2.1 megabytes of memory, which could actually go up to 6 megs when dense enough memory was available. The processor was also slightly upgraded from 8 megahertz to 12 megahertz, but one of the things that Compaq did to make it more portable was eliminate the built-in expandability. You didn't have the built-in 16-bit ISA expansion slots inside the machine itself. You did have the option for a built-in modem, and you had different drive options. They upgraded the drive. So for the first time, you had, from the factory, a 1.2 megabyte 5.25 inch drive. The previous one were either 320 or 360K, depending on if you're talking the Portable 1 or the Portable 2. And while there was a 360K version of the slim drive, most of these come equipped with 1.2 megs from what I've seen. And you could go with 2 drives, but most of them came with a built-in hard drive. In this case, you had the option of going from either 20 or 40 megs. Now, while the base configuration was a fairly slim design for the time, if you did need the expandability, Compaq was happy to sell you a expansion bay, which would clip on the back like this and add quite a bit to the length and girth of the machine. But it did give you 2 full-length 16-bit expansion card slots inside, which you could do with as you please. Again, you could add memory if you didn't have the expansion board. You could have, networking, hard cards. In fact, the garage machine where this expansion bay came from has a sticker on it that advertises a hard card, which was what was installed in here when I originally got it. And you could also upgrade the graphics card to any compatible 16-bit card. The only problem is, now that this is an external enclosure, you can't connect the internal screen to a graphics card you put in here. You have to use it exclusively externally, which really kind of eliminates the portability of this machine. As it is, the built-in graphics that came installed in these machines was basically just a minor upgraded version of what came in the first 2 Compaq portables, which was a dual mode MDA/CGA card. Was upgraded just a little bit because the screen on the gas plasma just supports up to 640 by 400, but otherwise anything that needed EGA or more advanced graphics, you're pretty much stuck with going the external route. And that was kind of a disadvantage compared to some other competitors. I mean, this was not a cheap machine at the time. They never were. None of the Compaq portables were. They were intended for business use, and they were all quite expensive. But Toshiba had similar machines, luggable machines with gas plasma displays that did have EGA support, and frankly kind of a nicer keyboard as well. And by the way, incidentally, Compaq did eventually get the 386 version out, but they changed the name to Compaq Portable 386. But otherwise, the enclosure is mostly the same. They did tweak the keyboard layout for that machine, but otherwise it's mostly an internal revision difference. But because, this was the one that kind of fell in my lap and I got a good deal on it, I've been having a lot of fun with it nonetheless. And so now what I want to do is I want to go over some of the features. I'm going to start with a music montage, which if you watch my channel, I love doing those. And then we'll go into details about the machine after that. So enjoy. Alright, well, I hope you enjoyed that montage. The rest of this is just me going into further detail about the modifications and the fixes and the things that I've done with this machine. And wouldn't you believe it, 1 minute into filming this video and a vertical line on my plasma screen decides to die. So I already swapped the screen out. This was the better working screen, but now it's worse. So I'm gonna swap it again, and then we'll get back to resuming this video. Okay, well, I swapped out the what would have been the original screen on here, and it's not going to be nearly as contrasty and bright as the other one. Unfortunately, I have to crank the brightness up quite a bit more, but no line. It's just unbelievable. I mean, this is also kind of worth mentioning with these machines, because anytime you're dealing with a gas plasma that's really old, I mean, this is from 1987, they tend to have failures like that. The chips that drive the plasma display that border around the screen tend to break over time. They tend to just wear out, go bad, and you know, you'd be hard pressed to buy new old stock chips to replace them. You basically have to find a broken screen and salvage the chips off of that and replace them. And it's not easy. It's fine pitch soldering. It's an advanced skill level type task, and it's just not something that I'm going to do for the time being. This screen, you'll see, does have lines when doing certain things, but during normal, you know, on a black-ish screen, you don't really see anything too noticeable. So anyway, on with the demonstration. Now, when I got this machine, it did need some kind of repairs. So as I mentioned in the intro, this is my second one, and it had a memory error. It was advertised as having a memory error, and that was actually a pretty easy fix. Just searching for the code ended up being a address in the base memory, so the memory that's directly on the motherboard within the first 640K. So I swapped the memory with the memory in the other machine, and it just came right up. It looked for an operating system. Of course, it did complain about the battery, so that was the next thing I had to change. Originally, you had like a plastic box with batteries in it that would connect to the motherboard to get your BIOS settings saved. And I found online someone else doing a restoration, and they linked to a GitHub page where there's these little PCBs that you could buy, and there's handy links to, you know, a part picker and a PCB manufacturing site. You know, not going to mention the famous PCB company that literally gets mentioned in every one of these videos. I'm sure you're sick of hearing about them. So you could use them, but there's also other companies. I actually did go with a different company, but it did take a long time to get made, so maybe not the best one to use. But you just put it together, and it has a type of coin cell battery that just plugs directly onto the motherboard, and away we went. And you do need to have that battery in order to be able to boot into a hard drive of some kind. And the hard drive, of course, built in was a Connor drive. You can see it's type 17, which would have made it the high-end model, the 40 meg drive. But they typically, as a lot of mechanical drives tend to do, it doesn't work. So when I took that drive out, I ended up with a lot of empty space inside. And so that's when basically I decided, well, what if I could fit a 3.5 inch 1.44 meg floppy drive in there? And so I did. And it works natively in the BIOS. You do need a Compaq configuration disk, but there's an option for a 3.5 inch drive, and it works natively. It works perfectly. I actually have that one configured as drive A, so if I need to boot off of a floppy, I'll boot off of the 3.5 inch drive. And it's just a lot more easy to make a 3.5 inch disk using, you know, slightly newer computers like Windows 98 computers and other machines that I have. But of course, I don't tend to use that much, because I ended up replacing the hard drive with a SD to IDE adapter, which I was able to plug directly into the IDE controller of this computer, and it works straight away, which is absolutely insane. Apparently Compaq was basically the one that pioneered the IDE standard. And without even needing an XT to IDE BIOS, this 286 machine can recognize up to 520 megabytes which is way more space than you'll ever need on a computer of this era. I put that in to a makeshift drive cage that I made out of polystyrene. I don't have a 3D printer, otherwise it would have been a lot easier. And mounted it kind of towards the back of the drive bay behind the floppy drive. And then I used an SD card extender to extend the slot to the front right next to the floppy disk drive. Yeah, it's really handy. I can access it and take it out and put files on it. And actually, it's an adapter within an adapter. It's actually a micro SD card, 512 megs. 512 megs is like the perfect size for a machine like this. I can use a small little USB micro SD reader in any regular computer and transfer files that way. DOS 6.22 can't even format more than 500 megabytes in a single partition, at least not natively, not any way that I've explored. So I'm pretty happy with the drive setup there. Now I did have to replace this keyboard cable because any of these machines, whether it be the Portable 3 or the 386, the original cable is going to be susceptible to dry rot. And what you're left with is this mess. You'll have various states of decay, but if it all falls off, all you have is this shielding, and it's all frayed and ugly looking. And yeah, so that had to be replaced. And I ended up buying an AT keyboard extender, which you can still get new from Amazon, at least as of the filming of this video. You know, I just wired it up inside. You know, you do have to solder the wires and tone out where the pins are in relation to the color wires. I'll put an image on the screen of what I found mine to be, but keep in mind, these machines, apparently they switch the colors in between production runs, so it may not apply to you. And I also had to learn how to coil the cable, which was something I never tried before, because it is just a straight wire, the one that you get from Amazon. But as you can see, it looks pretty good. And basically what you do is you just tightly wrap it around some kind of a rod or dowel and tape the ends. I find that Captain tape works the best because it holds it, and you need it to be heat resistant. And you put it in simmering water or water in a low boil for about 15 minutes, and you take it out and you rinse it with cold water, and it will hold the shape. And I do wish I could have made it just a little bit tighter so it fits just a little better in the groove, but still it looks really good. And I think the color matches the machine just about perfectly. So really happy how that turned out. And I needed a serial mouse. And the one I ended up going with that I thought matched the computer best was this old Logitech C7 mouse, which is, I think, from 1989. But I just thought it looked, so 80s. It just perfectly matches pretty much the aesthetic of the computer itself. And these buttons have a very unique feel. It doesn't look very ergonomic, but honestly, because you're not really gripping it tight, you're just kind of hovering your fingers around it, it ends up being just fine in my experience. So pretty happy with that. These do tend to be maybe a little bit more expensive than, a clone mouse equivalent. But just look at that logo. Just this is a relic. And the other thing I did was my garage found system actually had a 287 in it, so might as well I put it in here. So you can see it is running at 12 megahertz with a 286 or 287 that runs at about 8 megahertz. This screen here, this is a little kind of a boot menu of sorts. When you first start the machine up, it's written into the auto exec. And it's not a true boot menu. It's not like a config sys thing, but it is like a list of shortcuts to the most typical things that at least I would want to do with this machine. And they're handy for not having to type in commands into DOS and change directories and all that stuff. So of course we can boot into the DOS prompt with 1. And you have a couple of handy reminders here, just telling you some shortcuts that you can type in. So it's still relatively easy to use anyway. You can boot straight into Windows or GEOS, or you can load a Norton Commander, or bring up the games list, or just type menu to go back to the menu, and doing so will clear the screen and bring it up just like it was. So yeah, let's go into the games menu, number 2. And this boots into a separate menu system, which I made with a program called Medley, which just makes it a lot easier when you have a lot of menu items, and you can do nested menus within this. So for example, at the bottom here, I have more, so we can bring up even more games there and go back with X. And even within this list, say for example, Commander Keen, I go to C, and then I have a sub menu of all the Commander Keen games that support CGA. And then we can go back and do, let's say, Test Drive. And once again, we've got a couple games in that series that will work on this machine. So you get the idea. Just really handy menu system for loading games quickly. And then of course when we exit, once again, it drops you right back into the menu. So theoretically, you'd never have to touch command prompt to do things unless you wanted to. And we have a couple different operating systems as well. So as you probably saw during the montage, there's 3 different ones. We'll skip the Windows 3.1 and go into Windows 286. So let's do that now. And it loads fairly quickly and does have mouse support. I've got the Logitech mouse here, and natively supports the 640 by 400 resolution. It auto-detected that, and we can go into Win 286 here. Usually what I use this for is to quickly boot into something where I can load up Notepad and make tweaks to the auto exec or to a batch file, because it boots up really quickly, it runs really snappy on this machine, and so it's just kind of handy for that. And that's mainly what I use Windows 286 for. Not much else. I mean, it's a pretty bare bones operating system. This is actually the first time I ever used it. It's got some built-in programs, but not a whole lot, and I didn't really bother to try to track down software that runs on here. I just, I figure the built-in utility is about the only thing maybe that I would use with it, and it's mostly there for amusement, pretty much. But we can go ahead and exit out, and surprise, surprise, here we're back into the menu. So every single item on here will bring you back to the menu unless you choose to exit out. So either it will start a batch file, and then at the end of the batch file it calls this menu back up, or the auto exec itself has a loop back to the menu. So let's go into what might be my favorite operating system, GEOS, or GeoWorks Ensemble 2.0. We'll type in 5 here, and this is just a really cool operating system. I know I'm going to get comments about it. It's not technically an operating system. It is just a DOS shell, but it is really sophisticated for the hardware that it supports. It's got a number of different programs built into it, including equivalents for word processor. This is your Excel GeoCalc. You got a database program here, and you've got a drawing program, and you also have other programs including 2 games, Solitaire and Tetris. One thing I do want to note is that this is running at the native resolution, and in order to achieve that, you go into the preferences, and we go into video here, and you can see we're running an AT&T 6300 mode. So this is what you got to choose to get native resolution support on this machine, and probably others like it. I think there was an option for a Toshiba. Yes, Toshiba 3100, which was the first one I chose because it's another gas plasma machine, and it doesn't work. I'm not sure why, but the AT&T one works perfectly. Now, I play Solitaire a lot on this operating system, because for one thing, it works really well. Screen's actually behaving right now, which is a shock, but usually you'll have flickering lines. You may see it develop here in a moment, but it actually works really well on a monochrome display like this. You can actually tell the difference between black and red. It is also really pretty detailed as well. You can double click to, so I actually played a lot of these. This text file down here, which is another cool feature of GeoWorks, you can have icons down in the minimize them down to the desktop, and they persist between boots. So I have this ongoing file of just my scores in solitaire, and then you click this little button, goes down here. And you can also do that for pretty much any program. You click the little dot in the corner, it goes down to the desktop, and it will be there the next time you boot up the operating system. And you can resume the game from there. You also have different card backs as well. Some look better than others in monochrome, but they all look pretty good, I think. So I want to show you GeoWrite real quick. We'll get to it in a minute, but I have tried Microsoft Word and other Office applications on this machine, and it's pretty limited in terms of the version of Office that you can run that will actually work well enough, like fast enough. But if you get a little menu here, you open up a document, and I have a couple like kind of blog-like posts that I wrote on this machine as I was restoring it, kind of keeping track of my progress. And I don't know if you can see it, there's a little white line starting to form here. Probably doesn't show up on the camera. So it supports a number of different fonts built in, and it's pretty much WYSIWYG. You can even draw shapes here. We can zoom in, and you can fill out the screen a little bit better there. But one of the more impressive things is that I can actually, without closing this document, open another one. Then we can go to Window, and we have a couple different options for displaying them simultaneously. So we can do overlapping. And now we have two documents open at once. You can copy between them. And it does take a second to redraw, but I mean, this is running pretty quick. You can also go into Tile, and it will show them side by side. Pretty limited in terms of view there. I guess you could zoom out. Let's try that. So obviously the zoom feature applies to both. You can't have a different zoom level for each document. But yeah, aside from not having like a spell check, this is a pretty sophisticated word processor that works on this machine. Other programs are similar to that, like GeoCalc here. Again, it loads up fairly quickly. This is a pretty modern-ish, GUI-driven Excel program, or Excel-like. So yeah, GeoWorks Ensemble for 286 systems, highly recommended. I saw this running on the Compaq Portable 386 in another video someone had posted on YouTube, but it works just fine on the 286 and runs at acceptable speed and looks really nice in my opinion. Skipping down to the bottom, you'll see an option to jam out. So we'll just press 7 here. And yeah, it loads up the AdLib jukebox. And there's actually mouse support, which I didn't expect when I first tried it. And we can go ahead and load up a song here. So let's just do that. And reaching around to the side, let's adjust the volume. And yeah, we have AdLib music on this machine built in. As you saw in the montage, there's a speaker that I kind of stuck in the expansion bay because there's so much room. Unless you're using full-length cards, you're gonna have a lot of empty space in there. So I thought, why not? Let's put a speaker in there. And one of the reasons I chose a Sound Blaster is because it has built-in, or at least the older ones have built-in speaker amplification, because they were intended to be plugged into Creative Labs passive speakers, or passive speakers in general from any company. And there's also settings in the mixer program that allow you to set gain. So if you set gain, well, it depends on the speaker that you choose, but the one that I have, I think it's 8 ohms. It requires the maximum 4 times gain. But then you have, you know, the volume knob on the back of the card there that lets you adjust the volume of the speaker inside. And I also have a switch wired up so that if you want to plug in headphones or external speakers, you can just hit that switch and turn off the internal speaker to not overload the amp, but also just so you don't have sound coming out from inside the machine. That speaker is also wired up with a modified fan connector that allows you to take the sound card out without having to remove the speaker. Or if I wanted to change the speaker at a later point, I could do that as well. Let's see, I have to play this one. So a Sound Blaster is kind of a an odd choice for a computer like this because, you know, obviously the Sound Blaster 16 was made more for the 386 and for later processors and newer computers than this. But I basically treat it like an ad-lib with the benefit of having, you know, a game port on it. It has enough power to drive a speaker internally directly off of the connector inside, and most of the games that support an ad-lib also support joysticks and such, and it makes games a lot more enjoyable to play. But if we go into a game that supports ad-lib and controllers, let's go into Wolfenstein 3D, and this is a modified version of Wolfenstein 3D that works in CGA, so it's going to look a little pixelated, but you get the full sound support. And actually it does support the sound effects as well, but unfortunately it just bogs down performance too much on a 286, so I actually just have the music playing through ad-lib, and then I have the sound effects through the PC speaker. And you can see we've got joystick support. Let's load a save here. And we're in, and it runs really well. Sounds great, but you can see here one of the issues with this display is this just persistent line. It shows as like a double width line on you know, typical CGA modes with 320 by 200 resolutions. And I mean, without any of the smearing, it looks really smooth and sharp. So plasma displays, if you can get one working good, are pretty amazing for playing DOS era games like this. The only thing is that it is sometimes a little difficult to discern objects without color, but obviously if I can, you know, salvage parts, I want to replace some of the driver chips and get the screen working properly. May not restore this one. I'd rather get the other one working that was originally in here, and I originally intended to show for this video before that vertical line appeared at the worst time possible. Unfortunately though, those chips are going to continue to keep dying and have to keep getting replaced. And, you know, eventually I'm just going to run out of chips, I guess. I mean, it's going to be an ongoing cat and mouse chase. And I wish there were chips that you could find easily that were like new old stock, and I didn't have to salvage them from other screens. Well, just got killed. Another really good one to show off the screen is Commander Keen, and we can load up. Let's load up one of the the later ones here. And the Commander Keen games are really good showcases for the screen and the just really sharp scrolling. You know, just the fact that you have this old flat display technology with no ghosting just looks really sharp and has a unique kind of presentation to it. Now, I do have the sound effects also playing through the ad-lib. There doesn't seem to be any performance penalty for doing that. As long as it's only going through FM synthesis, the computer seems to be fine with it. And this game series does support PC speaker sound effects as well, which do actually sound pretty good, but I don't find it all that necessary, so... When we quit out of a game, it goes back into the medley menu system. So you pick up where you left off. We can load up a different one. So this is one here that gets shown a lot in DOS computer videos. I actually just got finished watching the Doom 30th anniversary live stream with John Romero and John Carmack, which was a really fun watch, and they had a lot of really interesting insights. But one of the things that John Carmack mentioned was that when they targeted low-end hardware, in other words, they came out with these CGA versions of these games later on after the originals had released with EGA and VGA support, and he was saying they basically never got really the sales to kind of justify. They never really got the reception from people. But man, I'm so glad they made these CGA versions, because these are some of the best games available to run on hardware of this era. I mean, definitely some of the better looking ones, at least. Kind of looks like it wants to cooperate. I don't really see the line right now. The line isn't there. It's almost always there, and for some reason it's cooperating with me. Yeah, this is more like what it's supposed to look like. Well, kind of wish it did this earlier when I was talking about the game, but hey, you know. So next I want to load Windows 3.1 just briefly. There isn't really a whole lot to show. 3.11 does require a newer processor unless you run like a 386 emulation program in a config sys, but 3.1 supports the 286 natively, and I don't know if you could hear that, but we do have sound. In fact, I can load up Media Player and we can play Canyon.mid. And honestly, it sounds pretty terrible. And the reason is I can't really use proper Sound Blaster 16 drivers in Windows. They all require a 386, and even with the 386 emulator program loaded up, the drivers still don't work. You can't fool it. It knows you're running a 286, it'll hate you for it, and will crash your operating system. So it does have built-in drivers for Sound Blaster 1.5, which it complains about because it knows it doesn't match your hardware, but it will load it up anyway, and it will get you at least basic sound going. So it's only going to be in mono, which big whoop, I only have one speaker hooked up, and it's not going to be 16-bit or anything, which is fine as well, since this is a 286. It doesn't have really the performance to back that up. So hey, at least we got some sound. And I did go ahead and load up some Office applications. Office 2.5 was the kind of the newest one that runs okay. This has Word 2.0, Excel 4.0, PowerPoint 2.0. and it runs decently enough. Incidentally, it might be a good time to mention that the keyboard is not the greatest to type on. This is a rubber dome style keyboard, so fortunately not foam and foil like the earlier Compaqs, but it's the key feels not the worst I've ever experienced, but it's a bit kind of mushy and it's not super great, but it is functional. This is an AT style layout, so if you didn't know, there's no arrow keys. Basically you just have the number pad here, which you have to switch on and off if you want to actually use the numbers. Otherwise, this serves as your arrows. You do have caps lock down here and control up here, and escape is not where you expect it. It's actually over here by the number pad, and you are missing F11 and F12. So those are the constraints of the AT style keyboard, but this is in keeping with IBM's quote-unquote standard, and it takes a while to get used to, but I've been working on this computer for months, so I'm decently familiar with it now. But in the beginning it was kind of a pain. I would constantly hit the wrong button, and I don't like that the backspace is so small up here. It's very easy to hit the slash instead. And incidentally, if you are curious, we can minimize Microsoft Word here and check the memory, and we still have 80% free in Windows 3.1. So honestly, 2 megs seems like it's plenty enough. I mean, this is really the most intensive operating system I have, and it runs just fine. I mean, it's really like 2 megs is pretty much as you need on a 286 based platform like this. So I didn't bother to, max it out. It can theoretically support 6 megs. You can do 1 meg modules in all 6 of those slots in the memory expansion board and really crank it up. But I have yet to find a program that needs that much memory, and it would take ages to count up when you're booting it. I mean, as it is, it takes 40-ish seconds or so to boot up, which is enough for me. I don't need it to be any longer than that. Now, despite the fact that this is not a mechanical keyboard, something that's kind of neat is that Compaq had a feature where it would emulate the sound of a mechanical keyboard if you hit Control Alt, I think it's plus. And I don't know if you can hear that. Let me move the microphone. So it makes like a chirping noise when you type. And I don't know, I guess back in the day maybe some people like that, but it only works in native DOS programs and not in any of the operating systems, so really only here. And I prefer to leave that off. So you have different volume levels. You press plus and minus to tune it to your liking, but off is pretty good for me. There is also another command that you can do. If you hit Control Alt and backslash, now we're running in 8 megahertz mode. If you do it again, you get 2 beeps. And when you boot the system up, you will hear the 2 beeps as it automatically boots up in full speed mode, which is, of course, 12 megahertz. This can be somewhat useful in speed-sensitive games that were made for, XT class or Turbo XT. It will slow it down just a little bit, but I find in my experience it's not enough of a difference to really help make those games playable. 8 megahertz is just not different enough from 12, but they had the feature there just in case. Just to demonstrate the speed switching here, we'll do again Control Alt backslash, and it goes from what estimates 13.25. It's 12 megahertz, but we hit that single beep, and now we are down to what it's rating as 8.9. So yeah, you can do on-fly switching. Actually affects the FPU clock a little bit too, which is interesting. There's also one more keyboard shortcut that I want to show you. Using a device like this is from Monotech. It's the Eternal CRT, or really anything that can convert RGB to VGA. You can connect this to a more modern screen, or of course if you have a CGA or EGA display already, then you don't even need something like that. But if I hit Control Alt less than, it switches to the external output. I do have to mess with the phase a bit. All right, that should do it. So now anything that I launch from this point on is going to be on the external display. And now you see proper CGA colors, I suppose, if that is appealing to you. Looks pretty good, honestly. So, like for example, let's load up a game here. Let's say Planet X3. Seems obligatory. Let's choose a standard CGA mode and ad lib. So, I mean, it's up to you if this is better or worse, but personally, I think just the fact that, you have an orange gas plasma kind of subduing the colors, and I think it just kind of looks better for a lot of stuff. CGA isn't the most palatable thing in the world for actually using for games and stuff, but I mean, you have the option at least, I suppose. Actually, the CGA conversion of Wolfenstein looks pretty good. And I think the game is, or this conversion is using register manipulation to get a little bit more color out of it. So ends up looking actually pretty decent, or at least a close facsimile to how it's supposed to look. And you certainly don't have to worry about issues with your gas plasma display when using an external monitor. And the last item I want to show is number 6. This loads up a batch file, which loads up my 3COM Ethernet packet driver, and then the DHCP client program, and it usually takes more than one attempt. There it goes. And there we have it. We have a DOS web browser. It's a text-based web browser called Microweb, which I'll put a link in the description. I'll have a thing on the screen where you can see who makes it, and automatically loads into FrogFind, the Google equivalent for old DOS computers. But funny enough, this browser is actually sophisticated enough that you can just go to google.com and it will load it. And you even have the buttons. You could do a search. And it loads fairly quickly. I mean, again, no images, but you do have text. You could page down here or use the scroll bar in the corner. And as you probably noticed, there is mouse support. So this is actually really handy. And just to show you how I have it set up here, let's go to Norton Commander real quick. And we'll scroll down to the net program here and mtcp web.bat. Let's just take a look at that here. And yeah, so just really simple, loads up the 3COM driver with the address here, changes directory, loads up a configuration file, and then the DHCP but you load up microweb, and if you do a -T3100, that is a modifier for the Toshiba computer, again with the same or very similar plasma display, and it will load natively at 640 by 400 resolution. It works just fine on here. And specify a home page after that, and you're good to go. And then, as you can see, this is how a lot of my batch files work. It will go back to the base directory and load up menu.bat, which will bring you back to the menu screen after you're done browsing the web. And incidentally, this is the Wi-Fi adapter that I'm using. It's one of those that plugs into an outlet, and you can configure it to be just a Wi-Fi repeater, or you can configure it to just connect to the Wi-Fi and feed it through an Ethernet jack, so these older devices that don't have Wi-Fi can access your internet. And it actually does support 5G. So technically, this computer from 1987 is using 5G Wi-Fi to connect online. It would be really cool to have like some kind of Wi-Fi solution like tucked inside the computer somewhere. And I have seen other similar luggables where people have done stuff like that. But this is a semi-portable, not really portable, but compact solution where I don't have to have a wire running across the room to my router. So I'm pretty happy with that. So yeah, that will conclude basically this demonstration of the Compaq Portable 3 and my unit specifically. So I hope you enjoyed that. I don't delve into the DOS machines too often, but this computer has been a journey for me, a learning experience, and quite honestly, it's some of the most fun I've had with a retro computer in probably years. I mean, I absolutely adore this machine, and lately I've been turning it on like every day just to find something to do with it. And there's a lot more to do networking wise that I want to explore, including potentially a way to use Discord on this machine using some kind of an IRQ client. So I'm really interested in looking into that, and just continuing to explore all the different things that you can do on a retro machine like this. So thank you very much for watching, and happy DOS-cember, and take care.